Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I am here today to talk about the Worlds patch and how I think the meta is going to be at Worlds. I need I need to kind of warn you guys beforehand is that everything is strictly theoretical and based off the information I've gained in solo queue and the few matches that we've played on 5.16 and 5.17. And of course, everything's theoretical, and the main purpose of the video is to provide some context behind why I'll predict the way I predict world is going to be after the groups are drawn. So, to jump straight into it, the biggest change, of course, is Juggernauts, and like so many people have been asking me questions, Juggernauts, WTF, what is up with Juggernauts and what is the dealio? And I'm going to answer that question once and for all because I'm freaking tired of answering that question on streams, AMAs, AskFM, Twitter, it's starting to give me a pain in my brain, alright? So I'm gonna just link this video whenever someone asks me. So the first thing is Dead Man's Plate, Steraks Gauge, and Titanic Hydra. These are the 3 new items. Obviously, these 3 new items will have impact on top laners and maybe some junglers, but other than that, I'm just gonna toss away my phone because I heard it vibrate and it pisses me off. See you later. Alright, once again, Dead Man's Plate, Steraks Gauge, Titanic Hydra. These are items that are good in top lane. I don't have a clear opinion of Titanic Hydra. I think it's decent because it scales with HP. But I don't think it's too good. I think Steraks Gauge is the item that is the strongest of them all, simply because you can buy it on so many different champions. Dead Man's Play is something that is good for these bruisers in general, which I'm going to talk about now. So, when it comes to the meta, we take a look at top lane. That is where the Juggernauts are going to have the most impact, obviously, because we have Garen, we have Darius, and then we have the occasional troll lobster Skarner top lane, which is completely useless, don't play it. And Darius, Garen, sure, they are strong. Garen is kind of gimmicky. I would say Darius is stronger than Garen right now, obviously. There are some potential nerfs coming in for Garen, for Darius. If we take a look and search for Darius right here, we can see that he is getting nerfed. Decimate, the healing is reduced, maximum heal increased, so that's a small buff, I guess. Mana cost increased, which is, these changes are not going to change the strength and power of Darius. So I don't think it's going to matter too much. So Darius' role in a game, he has very obvious strengths and very obvious weaknesses. Keep this in mind. Very obvious strengths, very obvious weaknesses. So in a pick and ban, there are clear counters and there are clear things that Darius counters. So in a pick and ban scenario, I think Darius and Garen are going to make a difference, because it will impact what we can blind pick in top lane. Other things that are going to come in, I assume, is going to be champions like Jax, Aurelia, Fiora. I think these champions are going to be very good in the upcoming meta, simply because the new items, very strong. We've seen this very 2v2 oriented top lane style coming in, because TP pressure is something that is very easy to transition. So Aurelia, Jax are very benefited by the Steraks Gauge. Fiora, very strong champion in itself as well, but Fiora is obviously going to get hit by a nerf as well, because her base stats are too high. But I don't think it's gonna change the base idea of Fiora and why she's strong. And it's obviously her kit. The true damage is just too strong right now. So Jax, Aurelia, Garen, Darius, this is what I assume is going to be the top lane meta. So let's think about the old champions for a second. These are the new champions I expect coming in. Old champions, Gnar for example. Gnar has very weak matchup into Aurelia. I think it can do very good against Garen, very good against Darius. So I expect to see some Gnar play. But we've seen a lot of people also play Yasuo top, which is also something that might come into Gnar. But Gnar is going to be a pick that you don't blind pick. I think Gnar is going to be a pick that you're going to pick into specific matchups when enemy team are stupid enough to blind pick a Darius, for example. Fizz top lane has been completely nerfed to the ground because ultimate The W has been nerfed and the ultimate no longer amplifies physical damage. And this nerf, I know it was intended for top lane Fizz, to just remove top lane Fizz from the game, but it's actually a massive hit for mid lane Fizz as well. So I think Fizz at Worlds is going to be, there's going to be a lack of Fizz at Worlds for sure. The other champion is Maokai. Maokai, I think Maokai is pretty decent against Jax and Aurelia that I mentioned before. I think Maokai is going to get some play, but it's once again not a champion that you can blind pick because he can get completely massacred by something like Darius. Maybe if your plan is to lane swap, we can see a lot of Maokai. We can, like, your plan is to lane swap into something like gank heavy towards Darius, but then again you're gonna lose 2v2 in most scenarios. I don't think people are gonna gamble that hard on the Maokai unless they know for a fact that the enemy team does not play these top laners that are almost designed to slay people in melee. And of course the big question is Gangplank. Gangplank, I think he's been hit with some nerfs as well. We can check them out as well. This is PBE, of course, Gangplank. Bonus physical damage to champions lowered to 60, 90, 120, 150, 180 from 80, 110, 140, 170, 200. So this is not a big change, 20 damage per level, alright. This is, alright. I think Gangplank's strengths are still there. His crits are still going to be massive. So I think Gangplank is still going to get a bunch of play at Worlds. I think Gangplank is a champion that should probably do fine against these champions like basically the Juggernauts that we were talking about earlier, right? Because he's a champion that is benefited in situations where you're forced to run into him. Very good against melee champions. What other champions? Riven is a question people tend to ask. Riven, I feel Riven is of course a champion that Riven is a champion that can do good in most matchups, but is very skill oriented. And I personally, I will not invest the time in mastering Riven that is generally weaker against better teams and generally weaker in team fights. I don't think it's worth investing so much time into Riven to be able to play against these Aurelia and etc. these type of champions. So I kind of doubt that Riven is going to see a lot of play unless some teams still fall back to the old meta where Rumble is very relevant, Maokai, then I can see Riven getting played. But otherwise, no, I don't think Riven's going to see much play. Something that could be interesting is the Malphite, because Malphite is very good against most champions that are coming in as new. For example, Fiora, I think Malphite can do well against Fiora, can do well against Jax, can do well against Aurelia, and Malphite, his kit is very strong with the new, for example, the new Thornmail. That was the word I'm looking for, Thornmail. So I think Malphite might also see some play. So to summarize top lane, we have this dynamic where there's going to be very clear-cut counters. I think top lane top lane matchups are going to be very snowbally. Aurelia, Jax, these heroes can snowball and take control of the game. Seeing the pool of top lanes we have at Worlds, I think I can see a lot of teams play around their specific top laners. But the old Maokai can still be very relevant. And the old Gnar can be very relevant. So, to summarize Juggernauts in one sentence, it's going to have an impact on the pick and ban phase, but I do not think it's going to define the entire World Championship as people try to make it out to be. So we move on to mid lane. To me, mid lane is going to be the most changed role. Mid lane is going to get more changes than the actual top lane. Because if we take a look at the old three, like the holy trinity Illuminati of mid laners that people played, it was Azir, Victor, and Lulu. So let's analyze each one of them step by step. So let's begin with Lulu. Lulu has not been hit by any major nerfs. There's a plan to nerf her in the PBE, which, like this nerf, nobody gives a damn. So this nerf is not going to impact her at all. Nobody cares. This nerf is irrelevant. Lulu is still going to be the most picked and banned champion at Worlds, because Rumble is weaker and Azir has been nerfed, which were the two best champions against Lulu and Lulu compositions in general. So I think Lulu is going to be 100% picked and banned at Worlds unless some teams have missed it completely. And then we move on to Victor. Victor, everybody loves Victor, right? Well, Victor was hit by a nerf. They changed his hex core. I guess I can show it on the screen, so it makes more sense. Hex core, there we go. 10 mana per level. It doesn't give the flat mana, it gives 15 mana per level. Okay, it scales. And the flat ability power, he basically gets less ability power flat and less ability power at maximum rank as well. So it's a pretty big nerf. Victor, his weakness has always been fighting against long range carries, and long range carries have taken a step into the scene with the Kogmaw, the Tristana. We've even seen some Twitch in LPL. So these are champions that Victor is relatively weak against. And Victor, he's never been really OP. What was really OP about him was the fact that you can pick him at almost any times and you can guarantee that he's going to do good in a game. So his blind pick ability is what made him strong. But now he's weaker. I don't think Victor's going to get that much play at Worlds, simply because there's going to be so many new champions coming in. I'm going to dwell into that more as we proceed on to Azir. I think there's going to be so many new champions that are just stronger than Victor in the early game, in the mid game, and also in the late game. And like Victor is very strong late game. Well, I'm not going to deny that. Victor is still very strong late game, but the long range carries on AD carry is just, it has too much impact on Victor. I do not think it's going to get played that much as it has throughout this half of the season. So we move on. Azir, the Emperor of Shurima. Of course, Azir will have a massive, Azir has been nerfed, but he still has his identity. And his identity is still his soldiers, he has long range, and he can take control of fighters as well, Shurima, Shuffle, blah blah blah. The important thing to note about Azir, good against Lulu, as I mentioned. Good against Yasuo, which is also a pick that is going to come in a lot in Worlds. So Azir is still going to be very relevant. So Lulu, top tier. Azir, relevant in pick and ban, but I don't think it's something that people are going to blind pick, simply because there is so much new things coming into mid. So many things have been buffed. So many things have been played in the past without the buffs. So let's start off the top, right? Kassadin. Kassadin was hit with a massive buff. Ooh. I don't know if I have it on this page. Kassadin, this is big. This is massive because his ultimate actually does damage now. The AP ratio on his ultimate is insane. So this buff is really good because, keep in mind, people were already playing Kassadin before this buff against the likes of Victor, against the likes of Azir as a counter. So Kassadin, even stronger now, I think is going to see more play against these specific champions. So this is why I feel like Victor and Azir might fall out of favor, because you don't want to invest a ban into Kassadin, but you don't want to blind pick these champions anyway, which was their main strength before, where Azir and Victor could be blind picked. And that's why I think they're going to fall out of favor. Let's move down the list. We have LeBlanc. LeBlanc was also hit with a big buff. The cast time of Distortion, basically the teleport forward, has been lowered, so basically the animation is faster. That is also a big buff. Her damage numbers were the same when LeBlanc was considered broken, so I think LeBlanc is going to make a massive step back as well. And LeBlanc was also considered something that was really good into Victor and Azir, especially now. Like, people haven't played LeBlanc ever since Azir got nerfed, the nerf on his E. Azir was considered a very good pick into LeBlanc simply because he interrupted the distortion with his ultimate and his E. He can no longer do that, so LeBlanc is going to be a strong pick coming into Worlds. The other thing that we need to mention is cover Yasuo. We've seen Ryu play, we've seen God V play, we've seen a lot of players play it. Yasuo. The fact that Azir is going to fall out of favor means that Yasuo is going to raise up in value, and the fact that Lulu is very contested and will most likely not go through in a pick and ban will give Yasuo more value in mid lane, which is very important to note. And then we have this question about Diana and Echo. I put them in the same category because when they get their items, they are very strong, but how do they get to those items? Like Diana is an interesting pickle because it's a matter of how much will you let the Diana do. I think she's quite weaker early on. You can push her in and make sure that it's like there is almost no point harassing a Diana. Harassing a Diana in mid lane is just pointless because you will go out of mana. She's so tanky. She activates W. You just ignore the Diana. You push the wave. Make sure you get a good base in so she cannot base with TP. Get Doran's Ring and freeze. This is what you want to avoid, you know. So like Diana, I feel like she's fine, but I don't think it's gonna be a pick that is gonna lose people games or win people's games. You know, I think it's a fine pick, and there's been multiple players that have shown that this hero is very effective, and I think it's fine. Echo, on the other hand, it's like Echo is good into melee champions simply because Echo is a hero that needs to make use of distance. In mid lane there is very little distance. That's my difficulty with Echo mid lane. There is very little distance there. The mid lane is very small. And against ranged champions, Echo is not gonna do much because the distance even gets smaller, you know. He's at his tower, you know, you can't really commit with him into him, you cannot really make use of your ultimate. LeBlanc is going to shit on Echo, you know. Echo against melee champions like Yasuo, Diana, I can understand it. And it makes sense because he can actually make use of his kit. So Echo might see some play, but I don't like it too much. Zed, people keep asking me about Zed, you know. Zed is sure he can do well against people in lane, but it doesn't really matter that much because his ultimate is still not enough to do anything. Like later on you want to split push with Zed, okay, but then the enemy guy is gonna buy an hourglass, a quicksilver sash, and just hug his tower, and he's not gonna die. He has the TP advantage, and Zed is so weak in team fights, so it's like you just don't want to play Zed. His ultimate is too weak, and I don't think he needed this nerf at all. I do not think he needed the nerf on his ultimate at all. I think it was just noobs complaining that they didn't use quicksilver sash in time or got hit by every Q. I don't know, man. I don't think Zed needed this nerf. Ahri, on the other hand, I know I've been complaining about Ahri a lot, you know, this fox. I've been complaining a lot about how I don't like it, but now when Azir and Victor is out of the picture, you know, Ahri becomes more interesting because if these assassins going to come into the meta, Ahri has always been a safe pick, and safe pick is something we are lacking right now. We do not have enough safe picks in the meta right now to kind of suffice it, and Ahri coming in as a safe blind pick is completely fine. The next point is of course Lissandra. Lissandra was hit with a buff as well. She has her ultimate changed. She's getting this heal, but I don't think this buff is very relevant. The biggest reason Lissandra fell out of favor was because Cinderhulk. Assassins got nerfed, Cinderhulk came in, people started playing potato tank top lanes. Lissandra is not good against these champions. And I've been telling you guys for the past duration of the video, in mid, assassins are coming back. In top lane, Bruisers are coming back. Lissandra will make a comeback as well, because Lissandra is good against both. In mid lane, Lissandra is good against Yasuo, Lissandra is good against LeBlanc, it's good against plenty of things. So I think Lissandra in mid lane might do a comeback as well. And then there's this debacle about Twisted Fate. I saw Crumbs posted the video on it on of course Reddit, and my comment on Twisted Fate is like, I don't think the idea of when you pick Twisted Fate is going to change that much. I think Twisted Fate might have more impact as these lanes in top lane are very dynamic and snowball heavy, but I do not think that is going to be like a power pick at Worlds. I think still you get massacred by LeBlanc, you get massacred by Yasuo unless your wind wall bugs and you get gold carded anyway. You get massacred by most picks in mid, and as long as there's a good pick and ban, your enemy team is not going to allow you to have stronger top lane matchup, stronger bot lane matchup, and guarantee themselves to be able to transition that pressure into mid. So I think at high level play, I don't think Twisted Fate is going to get that much play, because his weaknesses are very clear. His laning phase is very weak against most champions. I think against Victor it's fine, because Victor is very weak early game as well. Victor is weak, but he's safe, you know? There's a difference. Twisted Fate is weak, but he's not that safe. Sure, he can set up some ganks, he can throw some gold cards, he can do some trades, you know, but against a clear-cut player, a good player, you're not gonna be able to do as much as you want to, you know? So I think Twisted Fate, sure, it might see some play, but I don't think it's like a power pick of some sort, because it still has very weak matchups into most mid laners, and I just don't see it, you know? Alright, so that's pretty much mid lane. Expect a lot of assassins, expect less blind pick Azir and less Victor. We move on to the jungle. So what's new? What's new? Alright, we have it up already here. We see Dragon's Rage. Tooltip now includes every time the target collides with an enemy champion, the target also deals 12, 15, 18% of the bonus health as physical damage. So this is interesting. I think the most interesting buff about Lee Sin is this. Now returns 200 energy in the first hit and 10 in the second from 15 on both. Now this is a good buff, because in team fights Lee Sin tended to get a bit energy stuff. So this is a good buff. The biggest buff to Lee Sin has to be the nerfs to the other champions. Elise has received nerfs. Gragas has received nerfs. And also, of course, Rek'Sai has been touched in the past. So I think Elise is going to get more play, but I still think Elise is a very strong into the Lee Sin pick. So I think the jungle meta is not going to change that much. Well, it's obviously the question on everyone's mind is the lobster, you know, the Skarner. And Skarner, sure, just as the other Juggernauts, has very clear-cut defined weaknesses. So with that in mind, he gets kited a lot, but let's think for a moment. What champ is going to be played in mid lane? If Victor and Azir are not going to be played, Lulu is going to be banned, okay, then Skarner kind of makes sense. Wow, alright. We can maybe pick Skarner into that Yasuo that is annoying. Maybe we can pick Skarner into that LeBlanc, you know? Then Skarner kind of makes more sense. He has very strong base stats, very strong numbers, and his jungle clear speed is good. But the question everyone has to ask themselves is like, what identity does he have to, like, what does he provide to an actual game besides his early game jungling and jungle clear speed and ganking, you know? And that is, of course, his role to ult people. Impale, of course, that is his identity, and he can make use of it against champions like this Yasuo. Needs to buy on QCS early, which is going to be efficient and is going to be good. So I think Skarner is going to see some play if the meta transitions as I assume is going to transition. But then again, Skarner has some insane number values as well, so maybe people would just pick it no matter what because he has insane numbers. So that was jungle. Skarner might be played into assassins and the Bruisers, very good pick. Everything else is going to remain similar, but the Lee Sin is going to be a higher priority. Now we move on to the AD carry role. So obviously there hasn't been much changes in AD carry role. We've seen Twitch being played, we've seen Kogmaw being played, Tristana being played. A lot of long range AD carries now cause Vayne. I don't think people have been asking me like, do we think Vayne is OP? I don't think Vayne is OP. For God's sake, Vayne is not OP. Vayne is strong. She has it's very clear what she can and cannot do, and because Vayne 1v9 in NA, I don't think is going I'm not ready to justify to say Vayne is OP, because she still has this problem with range. She's weak versus long range things. Like Tristana does really well against Vayne, Kogmaw does good against Vayne in some scenarios, in 1v1 later on Vayne with Blade and Kim can probably win, but I think Kogmaw is good against Vayne generally. And then Corki is pretty decent against Vayne. It's just that that Sivir pick has been coming in a lot, you know, and the biggest reason I think in Korea and in LPL that people have given up on the Sivir is primarily because of the Vayne that people picked into it. That's why we've been seeing a lot of Kogmaw and a lot of Twitch in general, because people have found out the weakness of Sivir. So coming into Worlds, I think we should expect to see less Sivir, because it kind of lines up for that Vayne that everyone is kind of crazy about. Vayne is pretty decent against these assassins we've mentioned before, decent against these bruisers, but you need to make sure that she kind of survives the early game as well. It's very important to highlight that, because Tristana and Kog, they're also pretty good against these bruisers. Most AD carries are. And something to highlight as well is the Kalista. She's been nerfed, her ult has been hit, her W does less damage. I think we could potentially find the Kalista nerfs already here. No, maybe on a different page. Kalista, where are you, my friend? We do not want to see her skins. Okay, that's about skins. Okay, I think it might have been 517. Kalista, where are you, my friend? Alright, passive damage lowered. Okay, so on rank 1 it's lowered by 2%. So the rank 1 is what is important. 2%. Okay. Fate's Call, reduce cooldown. Okay. Passive effect cooldown on specific target 10 seconds from 6 seconds. This is important as well. So I think the nerfs are pretty big. I think her weaknesses are going to be more defined. She's always had a weaker matchup into things like Tristana. She was weaker against Corki as well. And I think people are still going to play Kalista because her strengths are still there. But I cannot imagine that Kalista is going to follow the same trend where she's been 100% pick and banned. But I still definitely think people are going to play Kalista. I think it's still a fine champion. Very good ultimate. And has a very defined role in League. So it's going to be interesting to finally see Kalista as something where you can add it to compositions and not just be forced to pick it first rotation because it's broken. So I'm happy this change has been made. And I think these changes will kind of push towards that. So we move on to support. I think support is just going to be unchanged. Janna, Braum, Thresh, Alistar. I think we might see some Nami, maybe some Sona to counter the blind pick Janna, because a lot of teams have been blind picking Janna, but I think Braum is going to be the power pick of support throughout this World Championship. But I think Mr. Braum is also going to get hit by a nerf, if I remember correctly. But it's still like it's a number nerf. Mana cost increased. It's not that big deal because his identity remains the same. So I think Nami, okay, maybe some people will use it as a counter pick. I think Nami could be fine. I think Sona, okay, but these two champions that we mentioned, Nami and Sona, are pretty bad against assassins and bruisers in general. So I think people are gonna stick to Thresh, Janna, Braum, Alistar. They're just too superior, too good, because these champions, it's like a support. Like, just think about how much utility Thresh and Janna give. You know, it's so much. And then Braum and Alistar, they can do so much with so little gold. You know, they are practically unkillable and annoying without any gold. So support, I think, is going to be unchanged. I think support is in a good state where we have a lot of healthy supports, a lot of good supports, and supports with defined roles. So I really like the support role right now. So to summarize it, I think we've gone through every single role and how I think the meta will change and how the world's meta will be different. I think the meta is going to be very mid lane centric. In the meta previously, you know, when people were complaining, this mid lane is playing passive, Nocturne is playing passive, Frogen's playing passive, this guy's playing passive, you know. It made me sick because that was what the meta in mid was. You know, it just was, because you played Victor mid, you played Azir mid, you farmed for late game, and that was it. Because you had two bodies that were pushing the waves, and they just did that for 20 minutes. And then what happened on the rest of the map was what impacted mid, depending on how much you could push and how much you could do. So when people said that people were passive, it made me sick. So with this new assassin meta coming in, it's going to be very jungle centric in the early game specifically, because it's very easy to set up ganks with these champions. It's very easy to gank most of assassins as well. So I think is going to be a bit more centric around mid, and of course top lane. I think games are going to be very top lane centric simply because of the dynamic bruiser matchups. I think lane swaps are going to play a massive role as well, because it has a lot of impact on the mid lane matchup as well, because depending on how you play it, you can decide to invest your resources into mid lane, and that could also snowball the game. And I'm just happy that most likely we're going to head into assassin meta coming into Worlds. I just hope I'm fucking right, you know, because I'm tired of this, as you guys call it, passive mid lane farm meta. But most likely we'll go into assassin meta, bruiser top lane meta with Tonki support and the same old junglers. To just summarize every role once again: top lane, I'm expecting Jax, Aurelia, Fiora, Darius to be played. I'm not expecting too much Ganon. Maybe some Lissandra to counter the blind pick of Darius. I think Cannon might be played as well. I didn't mention it before, but I think Cannon might be fine as well. Old champions, I don't think Gnar could be fine as well as the same role as the Lissandra. The Maokai might come in as well. And of course Fizz is deleted. Gangplank's still good. Malphite might be played. I don't think Riven's going to be played that much. So in top lane we're going to have this bruiser-esque like meta, okay? Mid lane I think is going to be very last pick heavy. Oof, I think people want to last pick mid. I think there's going to be a lot of assassins in mid. Azir, Victor, I don't think people want to blind pick this too much. I think Cassidy is going to get played, the LeBlanc going to get played, the Yasuo get played. I need to take a sip of my beverage because I'm running out of voice, you know. Alright. Diana, Echo, who knows? Zed, still shit. Ahri, good blind pick. Lissandra, good against assassins. Summarized. Jungle, same old meta. Lee Sin stronger. Skarner, good against assassins, good against bruisers. AD carry, Tristana, Kogmaw, Corki, maybe some Twitch. Twitch is used as a counter to Kog. Kalista was used as a counter to Kog, so when Kalista's out of the picture, she's nerfed. Maybe we'll see a lot of Kog'Maw blind picks, a lot of Twitch blind picks. I touched on the Vayne part as well. I don't want to repeat it. I think Vayne is in a good state. I don't think Vayne was mostly used as a counter to Sivir, and generally I don't think it's that good. It's like the most OP thing was always the Vayne Braum, because Braum is really good against Corki and Sivir, because you can basically soak up their Q ability, which is their burst, and Sivir and Corki don't have the consistent DPS through levels 1 to 5 as other AD carries do. So it was that lane was just strong. But when people are going to play Twitch, Kog and Tristana, Vayne is not going to be equally strong. And so, of course, something I completely forgot is Mordekaiser. You know, I'm trying to avoid Mordekaiser because it's such a interesting pickle, you know, this Mordekaiser thing. Everything that I do is theoretical. This video is completely theoretical. I have the ability to depict something from solo queue, but other than that, I cannot do much more in practice. So, theoretically, Mordekaiser should do worse against most of these long-range AD carries, I can assume, if the right support is picked. I think some of the supports should be good into it as well. Alistar, I think Thresh should be good against it as well. And I do not think Mordekaiser is gonna get that much play at Worlds, because I think it's too weak in lane swap and there's just too much risk to it. I can imagine some teams might just cheese with it, might not, you know, because if you get a dragon, you've almost won the game, because you can just go full Khaleesi and just push. But this Mordekaiser thing, it's like, I think either it's going to get either it's not going to get played at all, or it's going to be banned every game. You know, there is no fine line, because it's so out there that either it's shit or too good. You know, that's the only way I can put it. I cannot predict Mordekaiser. It's just psh. Like Pain Gaming will probably like pick Mordekaiser, you know, and play bot lane and do good, maybe win a game, you know. But I don't know. Mordekaiser is just strange. So once again, Assassins mid lane, Bruisers top lane, same old AD carries with the additional Tristana, Kogmaw, and Twitch, of course. Other than that, I have nothing else to add. This video is some kind of pre-sequel to the worlds, the groups, because I have to do predictions and I have to kind of explain to you guys why I do my predictions as I do them. So thank you very much. And before I'm completely wrong with every single prediction, which is possible, yeah, fuck it. Maybe I'll be wrong in every prediction, but that's the fun part of it, you know. This is you guys got the chance to kind of go into my mind and how I look at every single patch when we're actually in the LCS, and we kind of depict the information of it, you know. Once again, I have had zero chances to try anything in practice because we are not screaming right now as ROCCAT. So to summarize this video, I think I've summarized it enough. I'm just gonna finish it up and say goodbye. Thank you very much for watching. If you sneeze during the video, please bless you and bless your face. I'll see you guys next time with the world's prediction video, blah blah blah. Peace out.